I think we could do so much good by telling people why what they eat matters and why it's so important to change their diets to eat all these wonderful, colorful fruits and vegetables, etc.
There's so many questions I want to ask you, but one of the good questions I think is to ask about, there's a lot of dieting fads going around. Every time I started looking at those dieting fads, I would feel anxiety about it. So I just never approached it. I just stuck with what I knew was going to give my brain what it needed. But can you talk to that a little bit? I think they've got ketogenic diets out there. There's a lot of intermittent fasting. There's all kinds of stuff on there. I've seen TED Talks about it. There's all kinds of stuff out there. Are those good ways to go about, getting nutrition for your body, or what do you advise when it comes to those things?
No, not at all. Not at all. Although some of them are very useful for other things. I have a lot of respect for the people who are doing research trying to elaborate on all the different, I call them specialty diets. And obviously some are obvious. I mean, some people really are very, very gluten sensitive, even if they don't test positive for celiac, and they know they have to be on a gluten-free diet. But in general, because I have always lived in the mental health world, looking at nutrition in relationship to mental health, I have seen too many people get discouraged and depressed. They already have a lot of negative self-talk. They're telling themselves they're failures, whatever. And then they go on one of these restrictive diets like ketogenic, which can be very difficult to follow. And so what I always tell clinicians is, don't begin there. Begin by teaching people the importance and why they should be eating real whole foods, Mediterranean style diets with lots of fruits and vegetables, fish or fish oil if they're not eating fish, and nuts and seeds and olive oil, etc. Do that first, because based on the American data that your government has been published in 2021 and 22, we could probably cut in half the nutrient deficiencies if people just stopped eating the ultra-processed chemical products and ate a whole foods diet, okay? And I can tell you where those numbers came from if we have time. But anyway, I don't want to lose my train of thought here, that I think we could do so much good by telling people why what they eat matters and why it's so important to change their diets to eat all these wonderful, colorful fruits and vegetables, etc. Somewhere down the line, someone who's already done that and they're eating a whole foods diet and lots of vegetables, etc., they want to try intermittent fasting or ketogenic or whatever. If they're up for that, fine, go try it. And some people feel they get a lot out of it. But beginning there is just, I think, the wrong public health message.
Well, I think one of the challenges, and I was thinking about this when I was, reading your book, is that doctors aren't really trained on nutrition, right? And so if they want to learn about it, they have to go out and seek that knowledge on their own. And even my doctor, when I brought the micronutrient treatment to him, I was desperate. I had been trying for 12 years with psychotropic medications and just kept getting sicker and sicker. And I was desperately trying to find something. And he admitted to me, he agreed to look at the studies. And once he looked at the studies, he agreed to help me transition. And a couple months later, he admitted to me that if I brought that information to him even a year before, he wouldn't have even looked at it. Because he said all of his training in medical school was focused on psychotropic medications as the only viable option. And then all of the continuing education that they do was funded by pharmaceutical companies. And so he said it was never even on his radar. And it wasn't something that he even considered a valid. And he was almost to retirement by the time I was his patient. So he'd been, treating people for over 30 years at that point. So why do you think that we don't focus on nutrition? I mean, that seems like it seems like a basic thing. I mean, we have to understand that everything is connected in our bodies. our physical health. We can see the research. We can see that when somebody, when people get physically ill, a lot of times people get depressed, or they will start to suffer with mental health issues, and vice versa. A lot of times when people are suffering with mental health issues, they'll also be having, physical health issues. I mean, they obviously are connected. So why aren't we doing more? We know that nutrition is necessary for the body. Why aren't we doing more for the brain?
Yeah. Our doctors are just like you and me. We are all products of our education. And I've had physicians say to me, Bonnie, those vitamins and minerals, they don't do much in the brain, do they? And, my jaw hits the floor and I think, don't do much in the brain. Well, I mean, how can your brain function? Don't you know anything? I don't say this to them. Don't you know anything about, remember you learned about metabolism? Remember you learned about enzymes and how they work and how they draw on micronutrients in order to work. And those are called cofactors. That's why I always tell people we should be teaching the word cofactor in children in grade 6. By the 6th grade, you can understand what an enzymatic reaction is, and then an enzyme requires cofactors, which are vitamins and minerals. Pardon me, I'm going to sneeze, which is not good for having trouble blocking it. Okay, it's gone. At any rate, cofactor is a really important word. But even though many of the physicians who are like my age, who are in their 60s and 70s, they learned about metabolism, and they learned about a little bit about nutrition in the sense of rare metabolic disorders. They have never been taught to transfer that information to just overall brain health. Instead, they are, as you said, bombarded by continuing medical education from pharmaceutical companies. And I'm old enough to remember when no physician would have done a study that was funded by a drug company. Now, 100% of the mental health studies are funded by the drug companies. And I mean, that's why those of us studying micronutrients and supplements, as your audience might call them, will not accept any money. We won't let any of the natural health product companies fund the studies. I just think that this has been a horrible trend that I've observed, in my lifetime. I also remember a time when rounds and seminars, because I've always been in medical faculties, even though I'm a PhD, were always funded by the academic institutions and the hospitals. And I remember when drug companies started paying for the lunch, that was, you were getting a seminar over lunch. And some medical students fought against it. And I remember when there was a woman who was in medical school in Boston who tried to start a brown bag movement to bring your own lunch. Don't support this system where the drug companies are taking over our medical education. But, it's a very big and powerful thing.